Okay, hello everybody. We're back with Embracing Diversity. I'm Raven, and we're doing something a little different today. I have a panel with me of some amazing women. I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you. The theme of our webinar today is moms of boys. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of action going on in our country surrounding um, Black lives, surrounding diversity and justice. And we want to talk a little about that. Everyone on our panel is a mother of a boy or more. And so I'm going to let them briefly introduce themselves. We'll start with Amanda from the top.
Hi, you guys. My name is Amanda Jones. I am a public relations specialist. Of course, I volunteer with Embracing Diversity, and I also work for Innovative Workforce Development as a communication coordinator for the community. I have one son, one beautiful son. His name is Aiden. The reason I, agreed to do this panel because he's 3 and he's growing up in this um, in this world, and there's a lot of things surrounding that resonates with him, and I want to be able to pave a way or be able to help and guide him through all these troubles times that we're going through.
And Emily?
Hey y'all, my name is Emily Harden. I have 3 sons. I'm the director of a nonprofit in Jackson. We're called Red Door Jackson, and I simply admire and respect and so enjoy Raven and the work that she and you do through embracing diversity. Amanda, I am married to a white male and raising 3 white males, and I feel a certain strong sense of responsibility for how I raise my 3 white males in this world, and to do it well. So I was honored when you asked me to join you women. Raven, thank you.
Yes. And Jessie?
Hi there, my name is Jessie Lavlanet, and I have 2 children. One, actually a man, he's 34 years old. And I've been working in the social work field for about 25 years. So I've worked in different agencies, but always with families and always dealing with social justice and, how, people are treated based on their race and, by basically the system and all of that. And I am very honored to be on this panel. And I'm just looking forward to sharing some of my thoughts. And also diversity has always been something that I believe strongly in, diversity, and how people can get along with each other, how we can coexist.
Well, thank you, ladies, for your introductions. I'm going to ask you a question. Like I said, as you know, there's been a lot in the nation and internationally surrounding police brutality, surrounding Black lives, and specifically concerning males. From you guys' perspective, how does this affect you and your sons and clients that you work with? Have you seen have any of them reached out to you and like just needed to talk? Like, what are some of the things that you've seen, and how does it affect you guys?
Well, for me, um, I can't. I won't say I was blinded to what everything was going on. I grew up in a little town in the Delta. Went to school predominantly Black, so my interaction with diversity was very limited until I went to Mississippi College. And what's going on today, it wasn't until I heard his name is Killer Mike, rapper Killer Mike in Atlanta, until I heard him speak on the riots and everything that was going on in Georgia. It wasn't until then that it hit me and I broke down crying, for my son, because it was like, wow. And it hit me so hard because my mom had 4 girls, not one boy in sight, didn't grow up around boys, and nothing but, my family is predominantly women, so we're led by women. So for me to have a son and to see the injustice, and it scares me to think about what he's going to have to endure, or have to deal with, and how do I guide him when I don't know how to handle certain situations myself. Um, it's scary, and I just broke down and cried, and I talked to my mom, and she was like, "You're just gonna have to, raise him to be respectful, raise him to, be the kind of man that he's supposed to be, and pray with him and teach him God's way." And so far, that's the only thing that I have a clue, as far as step 1, step 2, because even as a mom, it doesn't come with a structure manual, right? Like, there's no right way, wrong way. You're learning and you got it. He's my first child, my only child. So everything I'm doing is like, trial and error, trial and error. So, and to have this added pressure on, like, when do I talk? He's 3. When do I talk to him about this, right? When do I introduce him to this? And should I introduce this to him at 10 or now, when my son is 3 and he's a child? Let him be. It's like, let him be a child, but at what point do I have to break that innocence, or help him realize what the real world is? And it's hard. It's really hard. And I have a lot of questions, because I don't know. And that's the hardest thing as a mom. I'm supposed to know these things, right? I'm supposed to be able to answer all his questions, and I don't have the answers to a lot of these questions. And that's the scary thing, because I don't want him walking in this world and not know.
That's deep, Amanda. I appreciate you sharing that. The fear, that's deep. Anybody else have anything to share or to respond?
Sure. Like I said, with me, my son, he is a grown man, and being from outside of the United States, because I'm originally from Haiti, that was not a concern for me. That wasn't something that I thought I should have. I knew about the injustice and everything like that, but it just wasn't really real. It wasn't. So it's a conversation that I never had. I have to say that I was concerned when he, decided that he was joining the armed forces, because the reason is, like, knowing the system, the way it operates. To me, that was a place where I felt that he could really be targeted and it would be okay, because that's the structure, that's the way, you need to just follow it, whatever it is that is being told to you. So I've had the conversation, do you know the history of the armed forces? Do you know about the separation, the segregation and all that? Are you ready for that? So, but he was gung-ho about doing it. So, he went in, but that's always been a concern, because for me, I feel like he was really putting himself in a situation where his best interests would not be a priority just because of who he is. Based on the history that I've read, that I've come to, learn about. So that's, that's something, that's always been a concern for me. And then to talking to him, he revealed to me that, one time he had, like, taken the car, like, without permission, and that he had come, because he was like a teenager, 15-year-old, that he had, been stopped by the cop, and then there was a gun drawn at him. And I was not aware of that. So he kept that from us. And also that, when he was younger, I put him in Catholic school, and we live in Michigan. And then he said, and I was in elementary school, like they wrote the N word on there, like the kid word that. And then he was explaining that to me, but it didn't really sink in with me. I'm like, okay, this is just a word because I didn't grow up here.
Yeah.
You see? So it didn't really, like, the importance of it didn't. But my ex-husband is, African American, so he really took it hard. He said that it was, something serious. And I just, at the time, I just couldn't. I said, send you to school to get a good education. This is a private school. Don't worry about it. You don't have to make friends there. That type of thinking. And, seeing what's going on in the world and everything like that, I totally understand it. But it's just saying, like, just coming from a different experience, just how it played out in my household.
Yeah.
You know, it just, this whole, everything that's been, coming out with, the protests and everything like that, it just kind of brought to mind for me too, like, certain experience that I've had, but had never really attached it to that. I was like, wait a minute, that was an instance where that was the case. It was just because, like, of who I was, that I was treated a certain way, that kind of thing. So these things are kind of like, it's just kind of really putting it into focus, even though, like Raven say, you do a lot of work, it, but to see it right there in your face and with everything else that's been popping up, it's just different.
Yeah.
It's like totally different.
Yeah. Go ahead, Emily.
I was just going to say, in answer to your question, I think for me, it breaks my heart. It makes me furious. And it also reminds me that because of the color of my skin, I'm in a position of privilege. And how can one of the driving questions is like, how can I use my privilege for good? And, for my boys, they're 10, 8, and 5. And so, Amanda, like, I'm wrestling with these questions too. And a lot of my white friends are as well, like that whole idea of innocence and when and how to talk to them. So the way, like, I feel like my boys are in a stage of awakening because we really in our house approach the sex talk and talks about race, injustice, and inequity in terms of like age appropriateness. So it's this evolving, ongoing conversation, right? So like with the murder of George Floyd, my boys know about it, but I felt like age appropriateness was not showing them the video, but telling them the story and allowing them to enter into conversations as my husband and I discuss things, and trying to keep our finger on the pulse of where they're at with this in terms of how many events we attend or conversations we bring them into, because we want them to want to continue this work when they get older, and we don't want to like burn them out now. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they're friends. They have friends. They have neighbors who are Black, and so their hearts are. It's righteous indignation is what I see on their faces. And then as for the young men that I have the privilege of working with, sometimes there's a hesitancy to want to talk to me about it. They've told me, they're like, we don't want to upset you by saying Black Lives Matter. And I said, actually, I say Black Lives Matter. And it surprised me that they were afraid that would upset me, because we've known each other I've lived here for 15 years. But I see just some hopelessness that things will never change. Speaking specifically about the teenage young men that I get to work with. And then I see it in like a lack of desire to interact with these systems that continue to fail them, politics, education. So kind of some hopelessness there. And then distrust of white people. That's another thing I see in the young men I get to work with.
Yeah. I think you guys have brought up a lot of things that Black America has been dealing with, from not knowing when to break your child's innocence and kind of feeling like you're stealing the innocence, by explaining these things to them. Jesse, you mentioned telling your kid, you don't have to make friends there. You just have to get an education. And I get that. My thought was, like, in any other situation, you would tell your kid to make friends, you know, to be social. So it's that need because of the situation to direct our children in a direction that we would not normally direct them because of their safety.
Um,
And
I, I want to talk about what Jesse and Emily said from my experience. You
mhm,
know, especially Jesse said that her son never told her the instances has happened,
yeah,
and um, for me, it was the same thing because I didn't know, like, how do you tell your parent this when you don't understand it yourself,
mm,
right? Um, I, like I said, I grew up in a country town, very, very small, and we had this one gas station there. And my mom had brought me back from college, going home, and I walked into the gas station. It was filled with nothing but white men, and I didn't think too much of it at all until like I felt the eyes staring, and then one of them said something to me inappropriately. And at that moment, I was like, I didn't know what to be scared or to be mad, I was confused. I was like, what? Like, I've never been put in that situation. So I never, until that moment, dealt with racism or dealt with anything that even looked like that. But I was upset about it. And the owner recognized who I was, and his comment was, she's not one of them. She's a Jones, and you don't want to mess with her. And at that moment, I was furious because it's like, I'm not one of them. Like, how
mm,
many Black young girls come in here that you hit on?
mm,
Um, like, how long has this been going on? Why do you all feel comfortable enough to be this approachable, to display this type of behavior? And I was so mad. I got in the car and my mom just took one look at me and was like, what happened? What's wrong? And I couldn't say anything because I was still trying to figure out like my own emotions. I was still trying to
right,
figure out like how I felt about the situation. And do I tell my mom like what happens? You know, I watch movies about Black and whites and the racism and slavery. Do I tell my mom? If I tell my mom what happens to her safety? Because of course she's gonna come to my defense.
yeah,
She's gonna stand up for me. So it's like, you know, I young age and I took like to take all this on and to have to deal with all of this, it was really difficult for me. And then when I got to the point where I told her, she just looked at me and was like, you should have said something.
mm,
You should have said something because no one should make you feel like you're anything less than what you are. Like, you shouldn't have dealt with that situation by yourself. But at the time, I just didn't know how to respond.
right,
Um, like I said, the lack of diversity, you know, yeah, tell my son, you know, make friends. And it's like, I didn't have white friends growing up. Like, you know, I didn't have any of that. It was like, you know, accustomed to Black people. And then I go to Mississippi College, which is really diverse. You have your Asians, Indians, white people, Black people. That was a huge culture shock to me. Huge culture shock to me. And I loved it and didn't realize like how much I needed it
mm,
because it allowed me to understand people. I got my minor in social work because I wanted to be able to understand people. I wanted to be able to, you know, dive into other people cultures and see how they live and see why they, you know, move the way they move, why they interpret certain things the way they interpret it. And for me, and like I said before, all of this is a learning process for me, and to, you know, make sure that I'm just guiding my son, you know, and in a way that he doesn't withhold that type of information from me, that he's
yeah,
comfortable enough to talk to me and like, you know what, I need to have this conversation with my mom, only because a lot of times in those situations it could go sideways, and if you don't talk about it once and it happened again, then who knows what happens the next time.
mhm. Yeah. I wanted to piggyback a little bit, Amanda. You said you you loved it. You went to Mississippi College. You were in a diverse situation, and you loved it, and it inspired you to choose social work, to study more, to learn more about other people. I had a similar situation with my rearing and my education that has prompted me to found Embracing Diversity because I loved it, because it was such a great experience. Um, let's talk a little bit about, I feel like there's a push-pull in this area. A love diversity, jump in, head first, figure it out, learn about other people, retreat for my safety. How do we process, or how have you guys thought about this? Are you feeling this? How have you processed this?
Mm. In terms of, diversity, I, for some reason, I always thought that where I was from was very diverse. But what I came to find out is like my little world, was diverse.
Yes.
And it wasn't really like the big picture.
Yes.
So it was kind of interesting. I'm like, what do you mean? Those kind of things. I'm like, but it's not really like that. It's just, all these boxes that we're putting in, like, you got to fit into this box. And all of this was new to me, identifying yourself as being Black. I mean, it's like, what do you mean? Because I have a nationality. I'm not so much, like tied to a race.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that the race is not there, but it's definitely was not accentuated like it is here.
Yes.
That's always been like something that I've always kind of like gone across. I said, could be any of this. I'm gonna uncheck all of them. I'm gonna, every time, it's like I always play a game with it. Like, it's like I want to be whatever, because I could be any of those. What does it matter? You need to wait and meet me to see who I am. I'm not sure what this measurement is about. Although I understand the ramification of it, I understand how important it is, and how much it plays, like the role that it plays, and how damaging and crucial it is, like to know the players, know what the system is about. But it was that whole thing. But I'm like, we are human beings. So I'm always going like the human race. I mean, there's only one race. We are, and then always like there's only we are all children of Africa. Why can't people understand that? Maybe if we do more education and stuff, people will understand that that's what it is. I mean, until science proves it differently, what is it that people are not getting? Happening now, I'm really seeing the pushback on that, because although we've had all of this happen, I mean, it's in our face every day so much, then I'm still hearing the same thing. It's almost like a willful blindness, willful ignorance, or inability to kind of like really, because if we really identified and faced that pink elephant, then what is that going to do to us? So maybe we just kind of like stay with that mindset and validate it whichever way we want to, in order to feel good, or whatever. But it's just like, yeah, the diversity, it's I was told like here it's a melting pot. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's a melting pot. They have all kind of different people. But then no, it has different ingredients in it, but each one of them, the peas stays with the peas, the carrots stays with the carrots, and and all of that. And I experienced that when I first came here and I went to high school. I walk into the lunchroom, and then all the white kids are, in their own group eating, and no one is forcing that upon them. And all the Black kids are, I never could understand that. I'm like, what is this about? That kind of stuff. So, experiencing like, that you're not really, you're in each other's presence, but really like invisible to each other. I mean, it's two different roads, not really intersecting. So, I think diversity is very important. I think that until we get that and understand that everybody is the same yet different in certain things, but really there's more commonality than there are differences in terms of how we function, how we think, how we feel, everything, because
Yes.
we are human beings.
Yes. That's so important to get that and to get to know each other and to find those commonalities, because we are at our core, not just like our minds and but like just in general, like we all hurt for the same reasons, we're all happy at the same occasions. It's just, we're not other, we just have defined ourselves as other, or have allowed that definition to be in society. Anybody else? Anything else?
For me, she said it's the color blindness, it's the ignorance, and it is the lack of education. Behavior is taught, right? Like what your kids think and how they feel about other people is what they see and learn at home. I feel like we have to break the cycle. And me as a Black woman, one thing I do feel strongly about is starting. I feel like it starts with me, and what I mean by that is I'm all for Black Lives Matter, but not everyone is a racist, right? Not everyone hates people of color. When do we create those environments where we show them how we want to be treated, where we show them what we need, and have them at the seat at our table instead of pushing for a seat at theirs?
Yes.
That was good.
Yes, powerful.
That was so good.
Yes.
It's something that I thought about for a long time, and I feel strongly about, because I see all these things popping up. Support Black dollars, support Black businesses, Black Lives Matter, and we're steady dividing ourselves. Like when we create those venues and create those situations, we're constantly dividing ourselves and separating ourselves from other people, from the Latin culture, from Hispanics, from Indians. And they did a documentary on Chinese Americans that is in Mississippi, a whole culture. We're steady separating ourselves and we're trying to show that we are a part of this country, but in a way we're still dividing ourselves from this country.
Yes.
So at what point do we, as I said, create a table where, you know what, we don't have to have a seat at your table, but you're welcome at ours? And it starts with the education. It starts with moving differently and thinking differently, and we have to, the way I feel, if you want to be treated differently, then you have to show certain people how you want to be treated. And how we treat people is how we've been treated. And we want to change that dynamic. We want to change that mindset, then we have to do better.
Amanda, you said a mouthful.
Preach it,
girl. Preach
sure
it.
did.
Yes.
That is awesome. And it takes so much guts to do that. To say, we're not welcome at your table, but you're welcome at ours. We're going to change the cycle. We've been doing it this way, A, B, C, D. We're just going to flip it around and do something else. One of my teachers, when I was in school, had an image of a clock with the gears. He said, if the gears are doing the same thing, it's just going to keep going. But if one changes, then it changes the whole system. So that was just, I'm gonna have to replay it. I'm gonna have to replay it, Amanda, and just.
I know.
We have we have about 7 minutes left.
Okay.
Anybody else want to say? I do want to talk a little bit about the future. And Emily, you brought up some things about like what can we do going forward? How can people who are white or who are not of African American descent participate and help? So what are some ideas about that? I know like we posted a statement concerning this topic. And one thing that we talked about is, of course, educating yourself on the history, on what some of these emotions are about. You guys can go to Embracing Diversity, Facebook.com/Embracing Diversity Inc. You can also go to our website, diverseworld.co. What are some things that you guys feel people can do to benefit the Black community and the nation as a whole?
I think, well, ironically, what I'm going to say, it's going to be ironic because I'm speaking, but I think that for a white person, I need to listen more and commit to, like you said, Raven, educating myself. And so I've been encouraging myself and my friends to do a personal evaluation. What voices of color am I listening to? What pastors, what podcasts, what books, what music? And I have to actively and intentionally diversify the voices I'm listening to and learning from. Have to, and I'm speaking for in response to like what can white people do. I think we also have to remove the insulation. It is very easy for white people to live in homogenous circles almost all the time, where they are always in white majority sphere. And so I'm not implying that we should use Black people to learn, but I think it's really important to remove the insulation from our lives so that we can have relationship. And I think that it's really important to find ourselves in situations where we are the racial minority and for me to embrace diversity means, Raven, I have to embrace awkward moments where I'm not the first one picked for the team. I don't understand all the jokes. I don't know the music references or the movie references. And I just have to embrace that awkward feeling of being disoriented. I realize how privileged that statement is because the majority of my life, I don't feel that way. And I know how many of my friends of color talk about having to adapt and change and mold themselves to be part of that normative culture, which is heartbreaking and wrong. And like that, when we talk about our hope for the future, that is something that I can't wait for, for that to not be the story of my Black and brown brothers and sisters, for that not to be their experience.
Anybody else? We've got 3 minutes. Anybody go?
I'm sorry. For me, I think it's realizing the danger of the single story. And this is something that, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but there's this Nigerian writer, and she has a YouTube on that. And her name is, everybody's shaking their heads. I'm thinking you guys already know Chimamanda Adichie. And it really is that, because there is no single story that supersedes everything. And I think that's where the whole white supremacy, paradigm lies on. And it gets in our way, everybody's way, because we're all educated that way. So the minute that we start incorporating and realizing there's no right or wrong, or one, story that is more important than the other in terms of education and everything like that, I think that would be the time that we really could make some strides towards, having a better future for race relation and all that.
That's awesome. I am going to share that YouTube video. We've shared it actually a couple times, but we hadn't shared it recently, and it's a really important TED Talk. So I'm going to share it again. But I just wanted to thank you guys for agreeing to be on this panel, for coming in, sharing your heart, being so awesome and deep. You guys have been instrumental to me, not just today on this panel, but these are people who work with Embracing Diversity in the background that you guys never see. So I am amazingly thankful for each of them. And yeah, thank you guys for coming out or for
Thank
staying
you.
in.
Thank you. Thank you.
All
Thank
righty.
you.
You're very welcome. Talk to you guys later.
All
Bye,
right.
everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.